What's up, adventurers? Today we are at the gateway to the west. We are at the St. Louis Arch National Park, and I'm going to be taking you guys around to show you what's here, what it's like. Let's go adventuring. The Gateway Arch idea started in 1933 with the city wanting some kind of a monument to mark St. Louis as being the gateway to the West. So from the 30s to about 1965, the idea started to take shape, and that's when officially it was built. 1967, the arch is completed for the public. Like Indigo National Park, they always have a good store to go to. Let's check this one out really quick here. So every other national park also has a coin press machine, or collectible medallions in this case. The whole thing this one pushes for is the whole westward expansion, learning about all the different history of the West and things like that. So just kind of take you through it. T-shirts, hoodies, you name it. Pictures, collectibles of every sort and kind. The big thing here is they made the Gateway Arch out of a piece of reinforced steel metal here. Take a look at Zuri, all these different buttons, pin, magnets. And the books are usually really good also. I can't recommend enough finding a good book at the national park. This national park, I think they purposely designed it to look like an airport to be going into the west. Basically, it's an airport to the west. Some more pictures, more books. This Welcome Center has a fudge counter, which I find really interesting. I've never seen a fudge counter in a national park, but here we are. So pumpkin syrup, really interesting. Welcome Center. It's kind of like a general store vibe going on here, which is kind of interesting. Caramel pecan truffle, salted caramel, cookies and cream, mint chocolate. Coconut. So many delicious sounding ones. And here's your national park pressed coins. Gateway Arch. Continuing on here. So this whole section is due to the America's obsession with the West and how pop culture and everything else sort of came as a result of the whole idea of westward expansion, and movies like Django Unchained and Westworld, how the West was won, all kind of came up with that idea of people thriving and wanting to go out west to get that feeling of being out there. And here's Blazing Saddles, a classic comedy. Here we go. 500 treaties made between the indigenous peoples, all were broken. Give you a little taste of what I'm talking about. Here is the indigenous people's number one food resource, the buffalo. The Plains Indians would actually follow them and have to be a nomadic tribe as a result. The Europeans came and would ride by on a train, shoot the guy, kill it, and keep driving. I'll just leave that there. So here's a distinctive double-pitched roof house that early St. Louis people would have lived in. Here's some of the implements they'd use. We have violins here. We have some Dutch settlers, obviously. I hate to use the word settlers, but it's not wrong. It's not right. It's just a word that was used. All over the world, people were here. Continuing on here. So, the river is where the superhighways, and the natives were doing that. People that were already here with their boats. Trade was very important, but again, what the indigenous people didn't realize was trading was just the start of what they thought would be a prosperous relationship that turned into be anything but. Here's a perfect example of that situation here as a cow that started a whole war, and basically the clash was publicized because of a Groton massacre, and a Danish overlander cow wandered away from a Mormon wagon, and the indigenous people's detachment of troops to the Lakota camp to speak with the chief, and they would not turn over the person who killed one of their cows. So again, with westward expansion came important things that were being done to these people who had been here making this their home for thousands of years. And they had to sit back and watch the European men and women throw trash everywhere, kill buffaloes for sport, and be wasteful of land and resources, where these people for many years had learned to live at one with the land and not wasteful. Okay, here we are again. Is it destiny or design? Manifest destiny is the idea that we European men had to come out and settle the land, and it was their destiny to do so. Of course, the indigenous peoples will tell you that land was taken, but the Europeans will say that it was won from them. Of course, as we've grown older as a society, we've learned that, in fact, there might be a different point of view, and I think history should be told from all points of view, not just one. So here's a coach that some of the Manifest Destiny people would use.
When I went back to St. Paul, I rode second class
to get from places. Trails to the west, here we go. Head out to the west. But Manifest Destiny and the idea of ethics kind of don't play into that. So anyways, that's a whole story for another day, as our indigenous friend told us the other day at the Trail of Tears Museum. This whole section is all about Manifest Destiny. And what is that? Well, that's basically the idea that the idea and want inside a European man's mind was to conquer and to settle. The irony is, the indigenous peoples of this area had already done that. This is the third busiest port in America here in Missouri. And as you can see in its heyday in the 1800s, all the different steamboats and riverboats, paddle boats. Of course, being a literature teacher, I do teach Tom Sawyer, and here he is, Sam Clemens. I've actually been to one of his houses where he did some publishing. And he actually walked out of here in April of 1859 with his riverboat pilot license in hand. He spent more than 2 years as learning the river under Horace Bixby's training. Good old Mark Twain. Or Sam Clemens, as his real name is. Here's a really beautiful mural of St. Louis and all the trading that happened here. The population was 160,000 by 1860. Some of the indigenous people trading here with boats coming in, people coming from all over the world. It's one of the steamboat wheels. Here's some medallions and things and peace medals and European peace medals. Trade with Mexico brings silver coins to St. Louis. Of course, St. Francis of Assisi statue, carved wood, early 18th century. Most of the Mexicans were Catholic or Christian. Here's some of the westward expansion routes that Lewis and Clark took from here in St. Louis. That's why they kind of call it the Gateway of the West. It's when westward expansion really started, and it started at this point. So it's kind of the idea. Here is the Missouri Fur Company, and we go inside here, and here is the prairie wagon, covered wagon, where, again, Lewis and Clark and many of the other explorers that went out west would have ridden in. And here on my channel, I'm trying to keep you guys informed, but not bore you with, I'm not going to read historical placards in big places like this. But yeah, this was what this is all about, is showing you history of westward expansion and the Lewis and Clark expeditions. Here's some more of the indigenous peoples that were in this area. We have Generous Chief Pawnee on oil on canvas there. Rainmaking among the Mandans and all others. This is some of the indigenous Pawnees that were here. And here's some of their regalia and weaponry, pipes, weapons. And here's a war club. Welcome to the Gateway Arch National Park Museum and Welcome Center. This National Park Welcome Center feels like you're going into an airport terminal. It's really bizarre compared to the out west ones that we've been to and all the other ones. But each park has its own personality, and this is it. I won't bore you with too much history and reading placards. I'll just give you a little rundown. This whole area was part of the Trail of Tears, and many of the indigenous people that were here were forced off during the Indian Removal Act. And that's kind of the main points of this. But they charge rides. The whole point of the piece of artwork was to go up to, is to give basically an open way to the west. So this is not a Cherokee living situation. This would be Plains Indians. We talked to an indigenous woman, and she was very clear that they didn't have to move in around like the indigenous peoples of the plains did, following buffalo herds. They got to stay put where they were. They would have lived in villages, permanent villages, settlements, and things. So this is part of the Lewis and Clark expedition, I guess, is what they're getting at here. It was part of the westward expansion, and this is the Great Plains Indian teepee. So the guys that were here, though, they wouldn't have lived in this. Hope you guys enjoyed St. Louis Arch National Park. I opted not to take the elevator to the top simply because it was really crowded this day and there's no windows in the elevator. It felt more like a airport terminal in the middle of a concrete jungle. Not my type of national park. We're national park number 14 for me. I like the ones in the wilderness. Today I am on Route 66, the Mother Road, or what's left of it here in St. Louis, Missouri. And this is the Merrimack River. And this is what's left of the old Merrimack River Bridge, built in the 1930s. This connected this part of Missouri over there closer to St. Louis. And I'm on now what's left of the abandoned Mother Road. As you can see, they've painted Route 66 iconography there, but this is all that's left of it on this section of things. They're trying to rebuild this bridge and refund it. And they kept the old iron trestles here from the 30s. And they're trying to raise enough money to get it repaved, to keep it from getting completely destroyed and torn down. They're trying to raise private funds. You have like a hawk lookout and maybe a drive-in theater and stuff like that. So right across the way here is an old roadhouse, which was kind of like a restaurant for the people that were on Route 66, and they've turned it into a Route 66 museum. So let's go check it out. So this was a neon sign from here in Missouri off the Mother Road, and it was from the Key family, and it was an old cafe near the Twin Bridges in Franklin County. The sign is the distinctive key shape playing on their last name, and they own and operate the cafe. Their family-led descendants donated the sign to the Route 66 State Park. Welcome to the Route 66 Museum here in Eureka, Missouri, and this is run by the Missouri State Park System, and the tour guide up front, just a wealth of information, and told us all sorts of really great stuff. So this is in an old roadhouse, and I'll show you some pictures in a minute. And this is part of the 1933 extension of Route 66. And here is where we're in right now. It's an old roadhouse called the Bridgehead Inn, and then it changed names and ownership, and it was called Steiny's Inn at one point. And it's from overlooking the Merrimack Highway, Route 66, the bridge I showed you at the beginning of the video. And he was just telling us that this area had a lot of pollution because a guy went through and sprayed the roads with a pollutant from factories that were making Agent Orange and things like that for Vietnam, just before Vietnam. What a bit of a mess, but they ended up cleaning it up, and the area ended up being a nice vacation community. But now it's owned by the park system. So here's the area for Times Beach, and this was the name of the area along the Merrimack River. It was a summer resort, year-round community by the 60s, dirt streets still across the town. Some 1970s town officials hired a waste hauler and sprayed the streets with oil to keep the dust down. The oil was contaminated with dioxin, which is a byproduct of Agent Orange. So, unfortunately, the area, there was a flood here in 1982. The area has definitely, Times Beach has seen its fair share of ups and downs. Here's the Times Beach, Missouri mayor's, some of his things he donated. Police officer's shirt from Times Beach. He was a pistol expert. So this part of Route 66 was attached, I think he said, in 1933 attachment. And it was a summer playground on the Merrimack River. And of course, here we go. And this is the State Park Visitor Center where we're at now. There's the old Route 66 attachment right here. So as you can see, there's I-44. And he said you only have to travel on 3 or 4 miles of the highway to actually get on Route 66. If you want, you can actually ride Route 66. Here is one really old mid-century Texaco St. Louis truck port. This is from Route 66 near the Merrimack River, and now a road ranger station is there today. Here's some more of the 1982 flood. Street signs. I like the old Burma Shave ad here. So this is a really cool exhibit here. This one's got the Coral Quartz Motel. Unfortunately, it was bulldozed in 1995, but it was iconic, and as you can see from the photos, the architecture is just out of this world. And they've got some really cool artifacts over here I'm going to show you in a minute. This hotel was Art Deco Motor Court. It was on the historical register when it's fully enclosed individual garages, and served travelers from 1941 to 1993. And it was so popular that Revel made a little Coral Court Motel Corvette diorama. So here's some of the bricks from the old hotel, from the exterior walls. Unfortunately, it was torn down in 95. Here's some cigarette ashtrays, Coral Court Motel towels, match keys, all sorts of stuff. There's some nice little postcards from the Coral Court. And if you were coming through St. Louis on the Mother Road, this was a place to stay. And there's a really nice photo of it. And you're going to recognize some of the signs there. It stood on Watson Road, just a mile southwest of the city limits of St. Louis. Became popular with couples who enjoyed adjoining garages, which allowed guests to enter their units' complete privacy. And here's some of the signs. As you can see, I just was showing you, these are the signs from 1941 to 1993 that graced the outside entrance of the Coral Court Motel. Not to get some more information as to why they had to tear it down if it was on the historic registry. There's another Hotel Sinclair Pennant Tavern System on Route 66. So this is from the Route 66 Lounge that once existed on the highway of Cuba, Missouri. And over here is a sign for the Pennant Hotel, which I was just showing you, the Sinclair Pennant Tavern system. $2.50 and up for a stay. Here's an old 1973 Six Flags over Mid-America. This is their St. Louis Six Flags. We've got official maps, public fishing. This is great. I had no idea the Six Flags had been here so long. The Six Flags over in Atlanta has been there a long time too, but this is a really OG Six Flags. We've got a 1956 Oldsmobile Supreme seat here that was actually made from the back end of a real Oldsmobile, so it's not plastic. This isn't one of those plastic deals you get online. And here's the Mother Road. So, all right. I've done that part. Been through Arizona, parts of New Mexico. Have not done Oklahoma. Did some of the northern part of Texas. We're in Missouri now. And I have not done the Chicago, Illinois part. So most of it, I'd say about 75 to 85% of it has been complete by me, but still have a ways to go. This is a old hauling company called 66 Campbell Express Incorporated. They took on the name of Route 66, and their logo was their mascot was a camel humping to please. And here's some of the items that people have donated over the years from the old Campbell 66 hauling. Spirit of Campbell 66. And this clock, I guess, that would have hung in the Campbell hauling offices. This would have been on the side of the building. It's interesting. It's like a camel that's completely and utterly overrun with weight. And there it is. So it started in 1926. And in the 50s, it continued. And then by 1985, they decommissioned it. Went out of business in 86. Humping to please. This is the 66 drive-in, or what's left of it. It was here from 1949 with 532 parking spaces, with speakers, and unfortunately, popularity of drive-ins faded in the 80s as VCRs came into fashion. It reopened in 1988 as a symbol of how the route refuses to die. So it sounds like this is still open and renovated, but this is some of the artifacts left over from the 66 Park-In Theater here in Missouri. Here's another theater. This was the movie house built by M.E. Gills at a cost of $300,000 on the route, opened in 1926. So this is a cool part about this. So it's something you don't really think about. This is the speaker, of course, you'd hang in for kids these days, you'd hang this on the inside of your car so you could hear the movie while you were watching it. Because nowadays, I think if you go to a movie theater or a drive-in, you just tune in your radio to a certain radio station and you can hear it. This, though, I've never seen. This is an actual heater. So you'd cut your car off to watch the movie, and I guess in order to stay here in the Midwest, it gets cold in the winter and fall. So if you were seeing a movie in the winter and fall and you turned your car off, this movie theater actually provided a heater. So you'd unhook this heater, and then you'd stick it inside your car, roll your window up with the speaker so you could stay warm while you watch the movie. I'd never seen that before. And here's a wonderful sign, Historic Route 66, Missouri. Here's a really neat story of the Phillips 66 gas station. 1927, preparations for the big event opened, and Phillips 66 Company was 66 years old when they started the Phillips 66 Company. Frank Phillips was, and he only had $66 to his name. So then he had 6,600 gallons of gasoline it sold. So the number 66 just kept popping up. So Route 66 definitely was a part of their plan. Here's some other Hudson Super 6 gas stations in the early 1900s. More Phillips 66. And if you never see these like V-shaped buildings, A-frames, it's usually if it's an old gas station here on the route. Clean restrooms. It's still, even back then, certified clean restrooms. This reminded me of Buc-ee's. A good advertisement. Consisted of 6 registered nurses, each dressed in light blue uniform military style out, driving cream and green automobiles. Their job was to cruise the highways in Phillips marketing territory and provide assistance for motorists. So Phillips 66 actually hired women to go around and do like AAA type stuff. Cooperate with various state highway patrols, and last but not least, help 66 by their courteous manner. Huh. Some more Deco Parks, Railhaven, free campgrounds in Shefferdecker Park, Joplin. Let me see if I can get there. Sorry. There we go. This is the Munger Moss Motel. Free continental breakfast. Toki's Barbecue. It's the Wagon Wheel Cabin Court. Hotel Cuba, Sunset Motel. Diamonds Restaurant, world's largest. These cabins are great. So unfortunately, a lot of these places are gone. He was just telling us these places are not being rebuilt, not being renovated, and we're coming up on the 100-year anniversary of the Mother Road. Next year will be 100 years. Frozen custard. Of course, here we've already done Mammoth, but caverns were back then too, also. There it is, right, the Merrimack Caverns. For all the people here. Dance in the Merrimack Caverns. They had to dance in the caverns itself. More items here. Artifacts, motel keys, keychains. Got my kicks on Route 66, Main Street of America. Really like that. Lazy Larry's, Daniel's Elbow Motel. I like Lazy Larry's, that's a good name for a hotel. Coming up on the 100-year birthday of Mother Road. It's called Lazy Larry's, Highway 66, New 44, Pacific, Missouri. Onondaga Cave. All right, there's the checklist. That's where it starts. Done it. Done it. Tucumcari. Definitely go check out the Blue Swallow. Northern Panhandle of Texas. Done it. Still gotta get that one off the list. And that one. So there's 2 states I need to do. We're in now Missouri, and 3 states I need to do. Excuse me. So Illinois, Kansas, and Oklahoma. And here's the song by Bobby Troop, Get Your Kids. Kicks on Route 66. I'd play it, but it's copyright. So this is from the Sylvan Beach Restaurant on Route 66. And this was donated by Greg Gotzik of Neon Works by Plasticine Company. Here's some chronological order showing the highway system, and it's getting built here. 1917, they make the Road Act. Anything before that, there weren't, state highways and things were created, but automobiles didn't pop into the scene yet. Lots of hitchhikers during the Depression. Traffic jams, things that never happened before because there were no cars. I really like that. Here's the guy that produced the TV show Route 66. A couple dozen of the shows along the route. It was a symbolic title, expression of going somewhere, best known American highway cutting across the backbone of America. So much of the route is now gone or not being maintained, which is a shame. Here's some more neat little license plates and things from every state that has the Mother Road going through it. All right, Route 66 fans, that about does it. I still have Kansas, Oklahoma, and Illinois on the route I need to cover. Hopefully by next year's 100th, I can do that. I would have liked to have done more of Missouri, but I just ran out of time. Missouri goes further west on the route. I did the eastern portion of the route in Missouri. But, you do what you can when you're on traveling. Like and subscribe.